Good morning, everyone. How are you? Let me know if you can hear me, if um, the sound is good, everything is well. So today we are going this flight of the soul um, workshop. So just let me know in the comments what's been happening for you, how are you feeling, and if there's anything uh, any sound issues or anything like that, just let me know in the chat so I can see it and I can reply to you and I can easily fix it. So today we're doing this, the Wheel of Life, Wholeness, Cycles of Existence, Mapping Your Season. Before we begin mapping the stages, it is important to understand the deeper frame of this process. That it's not only psychological exercise, it's not only the way to use the framework as a reflective worksheet, but it's a way of remembering ourselves, the nature of life, the cycle of life, and much larger order of life. So, for example, yesterday, if and from the 16th of May till yesterday, we had a huge Schumann resonance spikes. So what is a Schumann resonance spike? So the earth has a breath, like all we do, and it has a vibration, and the frequency of the vibration called Schumann resonance. So when it spikes out of nowhere, or it is from somewhere, you might feel it. If you attune to the earth's energy, if you attune to the frequency and vibrations, you might feel it. So, these spikes do happen, but they're never predictable. So if you felt different in the last, few days, last week, that was happening for you, just notice how does it affect you, because when it happens again, you'll probably have the meaning behind it. And of course, or you can do more research as coming back to that nature and how important it is for us in our life, and how we communicated in a way of, we find excuses of, oh, this happens, because I didn't think it through. But sometimes it's the earth has such a strong vibration, the nature has such a strong vibration that can interfere with your life. So in transpersonal therapy, as I am, we do not see human beings as isolated problem to be fixed. We don't see humans as being a single. We see the person as part of a greater field of a relationship of body, psyche, memory, family, nature, culture, spirit, symbol, and the wider collective intelligence of life itself, and especially the wider intelligence of nature. And the growth and the falls in small confines could resonate as a cycle of life, as a dialogue with the world that we inhabit and create. As we are born and we're going through that birth channel to expansion and growth, everything has a cycle. It transitions as times, the stress, the great potential, everything comes to understanding the context. So a lot of people suffer not only from pain, but also from losing the context of the pain. And when we lose the context, a life transition feels like a failure. So what I want to show tonight and where I'm leading is this life moves in cycles. Everything moves in cycles. And before we go into that, if you think of anything that is happening for you at the moment, or we look at your life in general. So you can decide yourself of how, important you want is something that's happening for you today that you want to dive in, go into that, or if you want to look at your whole life as a context of being a life cycle. So think of that, and we'll start with the breath. So when we lose everything that was before us, before you arrived here today, and come back to your breath, come back to your presence, come back to yourself, to your body, to your awareness of yourself, of you're in the present moment. So taking a deep breath in and then breathing out, and just think of whatever you came today with. How do you feel? How does your body feel? Taking a deep breath in and out, connecting to the breath, feeling, breathing in and out. And today I would like you to have a piece of paper. It could be as simple as pencil, pens, and then if you find, if you want to draw, it's up to you. You can continue drawing as I go through the cycle of life. So today I am doing it with the slides. So these are the slides. Let me know if you can see that well, if they appear well on your screen. But the most important, the slides are for visual connection of the stages that I'm going to talk to, and some of the parts in the slides that you can connect clearly to some of the questions or the names on it. So yes, the flight of the soul is, as I've explained, is basically wheel of life. The not inventing any artificial model. We are recognizing pattern that already exists everywhere, and we are going through all the stages. So as I said, you can start with focusing on one situation and start with that, creating that cycle and realizing where it is at the moment. Or of course you can do your life as stages from the beginning. And obviously as you can see on, it comes from the seeds into sprouts, into strains, and then everything dies and returns to the ground. So yeah, just make sure that you start with a situation that is happening for you right now, or if you want to go into your life cycle and connect to each stage of it. So it is true in macrocosm, in microcosm, as a project that you have, or the life itself. Okay, so wholeness is that what we are trying to build today, that we go through cycles and it all comes to feeling the whole, be understanding the concept of let's move through the stages one by one. As I speak about each page, I invite you to reflect and create this circle for yourself, not only on your chronological life, as we said, but also a project or present situation that is happening. So let's start with what memories do I hold of myself. Of course, if you think of your birth, So sometimes, the seed stage is the birth. So if you're talking about your arrival to the stage of your life, it might not have a memory. So if you begin from that beginning of form, the first emergence into existence, potential, tenderness, the need, the vulnerability, the original contact with life, the original idea creation. So that is the first stage when the seed awakened. The birth had happened, the hatching, that moment of existence, which is the seed contains a whole pattern, but not yet visible form. So the intelligence is hidden, the future is forward. So come back to that birth of an idea of yourself as a child, of relationship, of a new self, and just connect deeply. And I would like you to start with creating that visual representation of how do you see yourself as that hatching seed. Um, how does it feel in that stage? Of how would you describe yourself? What would be the word that comes for you? And how did you feel in that moment? The fragility, the potential, the need for protection, the first contact. What memories do you hold? How was the beginning for you? Was it safe, unsafe, welcome, confused? Do you allow myself to be in seed form, or do I demand immediate certainty in the moment when it comes to the project? Where in your life something just being born, and what are the earliest memories do you hold of that stage? So please look into that part of yourself. Right, and then just connect to that birth, and we're moving into the next stage, the childhood stage, the sprout. Childhood is a stage of exploration. It's playful, it's curious, it's open, observing. It learns by contact, repetition, experimentation. In the tree cycle, this is the sprout stage when you reach upward but still rely on your support. So it's discovering a world, it's learning the conditions of line, it's feeling the play, attachment, imagination. Very, just think of the childhood stage when you're still very dependent, and the needed safety and trust, basic, orientation of the world. But also the childhood becomes an inner stage where we feel that we are learning something from the beginning. Whenever we feel unsure, whenever we feel safe to grow. So what memories do you hold of your childhood stage? Where did you feel free to explore? Where did you feel unsafe and cautious? How was the play present for you? Was it absent? Where in your life do you still felt the support? And create that second stage vision of how you can connect that stage for you, the stage of childhood, the stage of sprouting. And we go into the next stage. So connect to that. And we go into the next stage. So the stage of initiation, it is very important stage when the threshold stage, the movement from innocence into conscious participation with life, the beginning of responsibility. The tree becomes, the sapling becomes, the sapling is no longer just the beginning, it has the roots, but they are not yet deep. So it's more exposed to the weather, to the forming structures. So think of that initiation stage where you mark the moment when life begins asking more from us. So feeling, there's a deeper realities. There's a more wisdom that you received. Where in your life have you been initiated at that stage, and what challenges? So that is a very strong stage, and I would like you to connect to that stage and create a visual representation, a word for you on your cycle, and map it out. How did it feel? What did it feel for you? What's happening in that stage for you of self-discovery, the initiation stage, and the process when it started, getting the roots in, and just put it in. So, and we're moving into this fourth stage, the adolescence, when the stage is identity formation through tension. It is a strong energy, testing, rebellion, passion, confusion, experimentation, and the need of differentiate from what came before. This is a tree cycle. So this is a stage when the small tree begins. It has more visible shape, but it's still unstable in storms. And it carries the intensity, emotional charge, boundary, testing, identity formation. Sorry. So that cycle of that small tree when adolescence is not confined to the teenage years. When we enter, the identity has been revoked, that the adolescence of the new life. So think of that stage for yourself as, how did it feel? What came up for you? Did you get to rebel safely? Did rebellion become dangerous? Where in your life do you feel still trying to define yourself against something? Where do you still carry that adolescence confusion, maybe shame, unmet expression? How did that adolescent stage felt for you when you start to carrying the identity and still trying to be claimed? So, and then create a visual representation for you of that trunking stage, the adolescent stage, the transformation stage, and see how it felt for you, and then put a force mark on your wheel, connect to that stage for yourself, and see what word comes up for that. And then we are moving into the 5th stage. So this is the adulthood stage, is a stage of having an identity, not simply age, but embodiment. And again, this tree represents not the ages, but the transformation of the process of becoming. And this is where the roots become deepened, the structure appeared, the strengths. The life begins to ask not only who you are, but what can you hold? And in the tree cycle, this is a mature tree. So the mature tree gives shelter. It has a very strong presence. It occupies a space. It withstands more the winds, the rains, the sun. So at this stage, it comes with responsibility, the self-sufficiency, steadiness, contribution, commitment, and you might not get to that stage and see where you are at the moment, but then we'll go through the whole cycle of understanding of the maturity of this every stage. So mature adulthood can be distorted when it is built on survival rather than wholeness, and then the responsibility becomes over functioning and strength becomes armoring. So what does mature adulthood mean to be you beyond just being productive, beyond just reaching the age of that maturity? Where do you feel in your life that you're rooted and capable? Where do you confuse self-sufficiency with having to do everything alone? And what are you truly able to hold now? Are you still developing adulthood from the inside? And how does this stage feel for you? What are the emotions that arises in that stage for you? With responsibilities, with presence, and being seen. So just write down for yourself what are the emotions when you start branching out, rooting in, and having that 5th stage. And you can write a symbol, you can write a word that comes up for you, and then we're going into the next stage of flowering, so blooming. And this is a very exploration stage, when a stage of reevaluation, finding of how can you expand from finding that identity, becoming have adult in the midlife stage, we would call that, where you start to feeling that you have this special authenticity about yourself. You have a special path, reorienting yourself, what is already in bloom for you, how does it open up? So see how that stage feels for you. Where do you find yourself noticing that connecting to that feeling that the flowering stage brings for you, giving the blooming and expanding further. So just connect to that, and again put the word for it, and then put a symbol if you want, and go through the next stage of fruiting. So I would say that when the elderhood is a stage when you start giving fruits, you start to feel that you can contribute and be generous, and you have gained a lot. And what do I now offer? So elderhood is a stage of more wisdom. It's not simply the being of, aged tree. So you have bloomed, you have created the identity of yourself, and then you go into the aging cycle. The aging tree may lose certain forms. It has given a lot to the seeds, and the seeds are going on their own. But it gains texture, it gains gravity, it has an authority, it has that wisdom, the slower pace, the perspective, the surrender, the acceptance of change, some sort of humility, teaching through presence, living from essence. So see how that stage feels for you, being that elderhood asks us to release the fantasy of endless outward growth that we always want to reach, never aging, always be young, always have energy. So this is a beautiful, graceful stage to learn this sacred of ripening, simplifying, and letting time speak through you, allowing that wisdom to come through you and sharing it without ideas of staying in the same adulthood age. So how is that elderhood stage feels for you? So please write, how does it feel? And then we'll move to the beautiful next stage, is the death. So the death is a stage of completion of the cycle, and it is finality, letting go, releasing, dissolution. In the tree cycle, this is the death tree. So the death is not an arrow, it is a cycle, it is a part of cycle, and the death doesn't show the ending of identity, ending of a dream, ending of a role. It shows the stage of giving the seeds to the next and returning to the roots. It is a place of remembrance. What am I ready to release and surrender for the new gifts to come through? It is a stage of grief, the truth, the rupture, and this matters deeply. What dies is not wasted. It becomes the ground. It becomes the compass for the next ones to come. So how does that feel? And with anything, the remembrance is a stage of integration and legacy. It is that important part where what remains after visible life changes, what remains there. If it's a meaning, if it's a memory, it's an influence, if it's just being, if it's a nourishment, if it's a story. So remembrance is not a nostalgia, it is metabolizing of what has been lived. So see how that stage reaches your body, reaches your emotion. Here we see that nothing is truly separate. The cycle continues, the past remains active and in the present, and what has been lived becomes soil for what comes next. So now, as you have your full circle, I hope this is the interpretation of all the stages. And what I want you to do at the moment is to look at your circle from birth, childhood, initiation, adolescent, adulthood, elderhood, death, and remembrance. And I have not put here the flowering and blooming stage, the blooming, flowering, and fruiting stage, because I think it adds the depth of the elderhood stages. But that's the kind of the cycle that shows you or the fluidity of stages. That's so what is important at the moment is these stages are not rigid boxes. Every day you can move from different stages where you haven't completed some of it. And a good part of this is that you can jump in all of these stages in the future, in the past, where you feel currently, and connect your relationship with that person, with that stage, with that pattern that you hold, with that, if it's a business idea, it has the same pattern. The birth is an idea, childhood is an experimentation, initiation is your first responsibility, adolescence is like testing, identity, adulthood is structure, stability, elderhood is refinement, and then death is moving into legacy, into something new. So if you think of any situation as well that currently on your agenda, same, how did it start, how did it evolve, then the responsibility comes in, then testing, then there would be structure, stability, understanding what has been happening, and then the refinement of that experience and reinvention, death, remembrance of that story to moving into the next cycle. I hope it does make sense. So if you have any questions, please put it in the comment. And if you have any questions about how to use this framework, how to use this cycle, yes, please put it in the comment. So the core reflective questions for this process is, where in your life are you at the moment, or where your situations, your project is currently at. And then as we go through the stages, what is currently, in seed, where are you in sprout, sometimes what is dying and needs to be remembered, where do you feel you have not fully moved out of stage. So, and that's would be something that we all have. So we have unfinished, unmet, and still waiting and wanting to process some stuff. So just write that down. Where do you think you should be? And where do you honestly feel you are today? So, so what would change if you stop comparing your stages and just looked at it as a whole, understanding the full picture, what becomes possible when you honor the natural cycle that you are actually in? So any questions, please put in a comment. And what I want you to leave with today is the purpose of this process is not to force yourself anywhere. It's not to move through this cycle. It's to bring you back into relationship with life that happens outside and inside of you. To remind you that you're not outside the cycle. You are part of it. You are the cycle. You belong to the same rhythmic intelligence as the seed, as the butterfly turning from the caterpillar, as the seasons, the tides, the moon. Be present with that context of the renewal, the grief, and welcome it all. It is part of us. We are here to feel. The society could create the structures where emotions are not welcome, and the participation in life should be perfect and fixed. So when you understand that more deeply, you begin to meet your life not as a mistake to correct, but as a living process to participate in. And I'm here to support you through the stages. So if you want to dive deep more into this practice, please reach out and we can go stage by stage and connect to it. But the idea of this whole mapping out yourself is to understand that it is natural. Everything that is happening for you, with you, outside of you, inside of you is just part of the cycle. And even the tree goes through these stages. Even the tree goes through this initiation stage of finding yourself, and then, goes through elderhood as well. So just be human and have compassion for yourself, that we all will go through death. We all will go into different stages, and it's natural. So, and someone's going through initiation at their old age, and trying to put the roots in. So there's no bound to the age. There's no bound to the stages. It is very fluid. So thank you all. I will finish today with the breath work as usual, and I am really, really welcoming you to message me the questions about this, because these slides, I'll go through all of them again from the start, so you can return to them and connect to each stage and see, what is really resonating for you. Where do you feel there's happiness coming through, the playfulness? Where do you feel there's a grief and unresolved issues that is coming up for you? And then you can use this map as to ground yourself and go, for example, into the sprouting stage and connect to how does it feel to be there fully in your body. And then, even going into the birth stage and feeling into that. So thank you all. We'll finish with the breath work to connect to your heart. So if you can just rub your hands, as we like to do that, very, very fast. And just create that balance between your two hands. Sorry, like that. I will remove this. So the balance between your hands, balance between your two parts of the brain, the feminine and masculine, the left and the right, and just sit like that. Taking 3 deep breaths in and breath out. Breath in, breath out. And just being grateful for being wherever you are today, at what stage you are. And then opening your arms and taking a deep breath and hugging yourself and saying thank you for giving yourself time today to, connect to this simple practice of understanding that we're all part of it, we're all in it, we're all part of nature. and map yourself out in that cycle. Thank you all, and I'm looking forward to see you again very, very soon.